Okay, so when you want it to show, you just press that blank display. It takes a while, yeah, and it takes a while. You might hear it's not working, but just it'll flash on. Okay. All right, everybody, group 2.
There's someone just went to the bathroom. Should we wait for him? Should we go?
I think you should go.
It's gonna take a second.
Yeah, it takes a couple of seconds.
All right, you guys ready? All right. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Good. Come on, guys. How's everyone doing today? Good. All right. My name's Eddie Tapia.
I'm Kaylee Scott.
And I'm Haley Stevens.
And today we're going over our strategic analysis of Chipotle Mexican Grill from our consulting practices. We felt it was valuable to share with you, our fellow consultants, so you can get a better understanding of what's going on in the industry today. Before that, I got a question for you guys. If you answer this question right, you get a $20 gift card to Chipotle. How many avocados are used in one batch of Chipotle's guac? Go!
15.
6, 30? 0. That's a 0.
27.
27? 17? 24?
40.
Little bit higher?
40.
30. 40?
42.
37.
100.
47? All right, that's close enough. There's actually 48. Okay? So there's about 48 avocados used in every batch of guac. So keep that in mind next time you guys go and order extra guac. Here's a little walkthrough of what we're going over today, guys. We're going to go through the external analysis, talk about the threats of Chipotle, some of Porter's 5 forces. Then we're going to go internal, talk about their financials, how they're performing inside. And then finally, we're going to go over some strategies and recommendations. Sound good? All right. First, seems like we're all pretty familiar with Chipotle, so I'm going to start. This is Stephen Ellis. He's the founder of Chipotle. He founded it in 1993 in Denver, Colorado. He was the CEO until 2017. He had some stints where he was co-CEO and so forth, but for the majority of the time, he was making the decisions. He had dreams of owning a fine dining restaurant, but those plans quickly changed once he started to see the growth that was Chipotle, right? They had this idea of getting sustainable, healthy, non-GMO, organic food as possible, and that idea started growing and growing and really started to take off, and now they're very successful. They have over 3,700 locations worldwide, and as of 2025, Ellis is officially a billionaire. It's pretty good for a guy selling burritos. We're gonna hop right into the external analysis, okay? We have an idea of Porter's 5 forces model, so I don't really want to beat a dead horse, but all of these fall under that, but we want to really talk about the threats that they all pose to the market and maybe some of the blind spots that Chipotle might not see. So first, we're going to talk about some of the competitors, the tariffs, and of course the supply chain. First, we're going to start off with Sweetgreen. Sweetgreen's a build-your-own bowl-style salad place, kind of similar to Chipotle. They have really good, healthy protein options. They have salads, quick service. So they're in that same fast casual segment that Chipotle operates in. Right now, they're really growing in the metropolitan cities. They're seen more as a lunch option. A lot of businessmen and businesswomen go and grab a quick salad on their lunch break. You know, they want fast and healthy. They're on Chipotle's radar, but they're growing slowly. They haven't yet pushed out into that suburban neighborhoods that Chipotle's are found in right now. But they're continuing to grow. Chipotle has to keep an eye on them because if they don't, they'll start getting market share. Chipotle really has to be careful with Cava. Is anyone here familiar with Cava? Yeah, some people. So Cava is a Mediterranean-style fast casual restaurant, and they're really stepping on Chipotle's toes. They're really growing very quickly, and Chipotle's got to watch this. So they have a very bold strategy of opening up really close to Chipotle's. They're kind of following Chipotle's blueprint. Where's Chipotle working? How are they making good progress? And how can they steal it? So they open up right next to existing Chipotle locations, trying to steal the customer base, trying to steal some of that marketing and stuff. Because think about it, they have very similar menu items. They just want to follow what's leading. And it's working. Cava's revenue grew by 35% from Q2 of 2023 to Q2 of 2024. They grew from $171 million to $230 million. This is a 35% increase in one calendar year, guys. This is huge. And it's even bigger because Cava only has less than 400 restaurants. Think about that. 35% growth in 1 year with less than 400 restaurants. If Chipotle's not careful, this is going to grow really fast. Cava's valuation per store is $43 million, where Chipotle's only 23 million. So they're growing faster than Chipotle, they're opening up right next to Chipotle, and they're valued even more than Chipotle. So this is the big problem in the market, guys. If you don't watch your competitors and watch what they're doing, they're gonna sneak up on you. Right now they have 400 locations, that can easily be 800, 1,200 in less than a few years. Next, we're gonna talk about tariffs. Obviously, we've been seeing the news and we've been seeing social media and stuff, people have been going crazy over the tariffs. We know what comes with tariffs, the costs are gonna go up. Specifically for Chipotle, they import a lot of avocados from Mexico. They're kind of dependent on that in their supply chain. So if those tariffs do get in place and they actually stick, there'll be some increased costs for their avocados, as well as some things that we might not think about, like paper goods and the supply chain that goes into the forks and the plasticware and so on. And finally, restaurant equipment. When you're opening up a new restaurant, you're gonna need to buy refrigerators and grills and burners and stuff, and those prices may go up. So understanding the political environment that Chipotle is operating in, you really gotta watch out because changes happen fast. Finally, we need to talk about Chipotle's supply chain. This is their greatest strength, but it also happens to be their greatest weakness, right? They're very focused on getting that fresh food to you. But this is how it starts. It starts right here where at the farm, whether it's for meat or produce. After the farm, it's gonna go to a processing plant. After the processing plant, it'll go to a distribution center. And from the distribution center, it's going straight into a Chipotle. So you can see this supply chain is very long and very stretched. The reason they have to do this is they want fresh ingredients from locally grown suppliers if possible. So because that reliance on the supply chain, there's a lot of hands touching this food, right? They gotta pack it, they gotta ship it, they gotta move it around. There's a lot of places for bad food to get mixed in with good food. There's places for temperature control to go wrong, and there's a lot of holes in the supply chain. If they're not careful with their supply chain, as they've been recently, there is a possibility that they have another E. coli outbreak. We all remember this from 2015. This tanked their stock prices. A lot of investors lost confidence in the company. They've been able to reel that back in, but still, if they have another issue like that, they might not be able to survive it. Now that we have a better understanding of the external threats that Chipotle is facing, I'm gonna pass it over to Kaylee, and she's gonna take you through the internal threats, or the internal analysis, sorry. Here you go, Kaylee.
So I'm gonna start by going over the value chain analysis and talk a little bit more about the supply chain. Like Eddie was saying, it can be a big strength for them, but it can also be a big weakness. One way that it helps them out is like how they've been able to recently get better management of it. They have a total of 23 regional distribution centers across around the entire US, and they also have, well, they try to place all of their locations within 80 miles of one of the distribution centers so that they can maintain their fresh and organic product for their customers, which is something that's really different than a lot of other fast food companies do. They tend to focus more on mass production and getting the product to the stores, which is why they focus more on flash freezing, which is when they send it to the distribution centers, they freeze it, and then they send it out and they reheat it, which sets Chipotle apart because they have a main focus on sustainability and providing fresh food for their customers. But they also, another value creating activity is their RFID tags. They started incorporating this recently into their supply chain management after they had some issues with their supply chain. Like Eddie was saying, there can be a lot of mistakes made. It basically just helps them keep track of all of their supplies in their supply chain, and so they can track it at each step. I'll go a little bit more into detail about how that works later on. Regarding food prep and delivery, all of their food is prepped and made in store and in front of the customers. So they have all of their kitchens open right behind the cash register, so you can see all the food is being made fresh. And then they also have an advantage over their competitors because they have like an assembly line ordering system where you go up to order, and then by the time you're paying, it's only been like a minute since you started ordering and you got to customize your entire meal. This is something that not many other fast food places have, and it sets them apart because it's so much faster than other fast food places. You can even go into other ones like McDonald's and you can still be waiting for a while because you have to order it and then they start preparing your food. They've also incorporated mobile ordering into their ordering systems, which makes the process even faster because you just submit the order online, you walk in, you find your name on the bag, and then you pick it up. Now moving on to the ethical and social responsibility part of it. Again, they have a big focus on sustainability, And one way that they show this to their customers is with their Food with Integrity tagline. It basically just sums up all of their sustainability efforts and how they prioritize real and fresh ingredients in their product, and how they focus on responsibly sourced meat for their supply chain and having sustainable farming in their supply chain as well. Even though like Eddie was saying earlier, having a main focus on sustainability and organic food can be a big help for them, it can also cause some problems. For example, whenever in 2015 they had some backlash from customers because they were making all these sustainability claims and customers weren't sure where they were coming from. And so shareholders thought it would be a good idea for them to start releasing an annual sustainability report where they kind of just detail out all of the stuff they've done in the past year for their sustainability efforts and where they've gone and kind of how they're doing it. And so that kind of solved that problem. And then they've also had some food-related illnesses that the CDC traced back to the Chipotle supply chain. This has happened on a couple different occurrences for Chipotle, so they needed to find a real long-term solution, which is where the RFID tags came in. They started putting these tags on every box from the very beginning of the supply chain, and it tracks it all the way through, and all anyone has to do at any point is scan a box, and it'll tell you exactly what's in it, where it's been, and who touched it, anything basically involved with the supply chain, which can be really useful for having health-related problems with their supply chain. They can trace it back to anywhere in the process. Now I'm going to go over the financial analysis. We decided to pick one from each different financial category. So to start off with, we did current ratio, which measures a company's liquidity. For Chipotle, their ratios increased all 3 years, which means that they're able to cover their short-term obligations or because they have sufficient current assets. The second ratio that we chose was debt equity ratio, which covers financial leverage. For this one, we're looking for a decrease in their ratios, and because they are all lower, it shows that they have decreasing financial risk and higher financial stability. For the third one, we chose total asset turnover, which shows how efficiently a company utilizes their assets. For this one, all the ratios should be above 1, and since theirs are, it shows that they have stable operational productivity. The fourth one we chose was profit margin, which measures profitability after all costs are considered. For this one, they're also all increasing, which is what we're looking for. So it shows that they have increased profitability and good cost control. And the final ratio that we chose was price earnings ratio. For this one, we're measuring market value and investor confidence. Because all of their numbers are increasing for this one as well, it shows that they have clear expectations for growth in the future and full investor confidence. And since all of their numbers for each category are in the right area, it shows that Chipotle is in good financial health right now and is expected to be in the future. Now I'm going to pass it on to Haley to talk about our strategy identification.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm hungry now, so
Me
let's see where they're going now. So in 2023, they partnered with Elisha to open their first Middle East location, and right now they have 3,665 locations in the United States, with 55 in Canada, 29 in the UK, and 7 in France. Now let's talk about their current business strategy. This strategy has helped them reach $11.3 billion in revenue in 2024. They use 53 ingredients with no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives, offering vegan and vegetarian options. Having the app feature that we all know and love where we can order ahead and earn loyalty points, and outsourcing to have fresh ingredients, which we've mentioned a few times about the supply chain. Now with some of the difficulties, the supply chain vulnerability. As Eddie has mentioned a few times, if something happens, it's no longer good and you're losing revenue at that point. The limited international locations, we need to grow this and get more recognized globally, which we'll go on to furthermore. And then the operating costs and competition. Having the fresh ingredients, it costs more, and so they're not having, whereas a McDonald's has like a frozen hamburger, you're getting those fresh quality ingredients and it is healthy. And then also their competition is kava and sweet green, as we've mentioned before. Next, moving on to the SWOT analysis, the main points that we found here for the strength was the fresh ingredients and them being healthy. The weakness is the vulnerability of the supply chain, but that's being combated with the new RFID tags. The opportunities to go more global, and the threats of kava and sweet green. However, they don't have any international locations, so that puts Chipotle a little bit higher on the chain. And now for our recommendations, we are going to go more global into Mexico, Philippines, Japan, and Qatar. And then also our main focus is to Qatar, offering halal options. We want to go into Mexico because we already have partnerships with them through our avocado farms. The Philippines because they're the third largest English-speaking country. Japan because of the fast-paced environment and grab-and-go style, as we've seen on TikTok with the 7-Eleven. And Qatar because it's an untapped market with a love for Mexican food. First, we're going to look at Qatar. We're going to talk about the rationale, the partnerships, and the World Cup influence. For rationale and offering halal options, what does halal mean? So basically, as Kaylee's mentioned before, everything is cut and processed in-house. So halal means that it needs to be healthfully slaughtered, a Muslim needs to perform the process, and it needs to be humane to drain the blood. All of this already aligns with Chipotle and how they already cut their meat. Moving on, we want a partnership with Agrico in Qatar. They are a hydroponic indoor farming area since it is hard to farm in Qatar because of the farming conditions, they are not great. They're located only 36 miles from the capital city of Doha, which is where we would put the Chipotle, and they can deliver ingredients within 24 hours. So this is from tomatoes, mushrooms, any ingredients that we use at Chipotle. And lastly, the World Cup influence. In 2022, the capital city of Doha held the World Cup, and they were introduced to Mexican style food and the demand increased, and this acted as a cultural bridge to connect the Qataris with Mexican style food. And this is a perfect time for Chipotle to enter.
All right, everybody. Now we're going to wrap this all up. We processed a lot of information throughout this, so we just want to highlight the key points from each of our parts. First, the external analysis. We really focus on the threats at Chipotle, some things that might be in their blind spots, and how they need to really do a good external scan of what's going on around them and fix some issues that they have with their supply chain and keeping their foot on the gas to keep that gap with their competitors.
For their internal analysis, most of their internal strengths come from their strong ethics and values, their innovation strategies, and their strong financials, all of which help support their long-term growth and help establish a competitive advantage for them.
And lastly, for the strategy identification and the recommendations, we went over the SWOT, the strategies of going into Qatar and going with halal options and going more global.
Thank you guys very much. Now we open it for questions.
Not a question, but it's like a comment. I liked how with the recommendations we went into detail of like each country and like specific to that country, and like it shows that you guys did like really good research, especially when it comes to like the localization, like the halal food and stuff like that. So great job.
Awesome, thank you.
I was just wondering if you guys were familiar with like Qdoba.
Qdoba? Yeah.
So I was wondering why maybe you didn't choose them as a competitor since you have more locations.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Qdoba is good, and they're also growing. But from our research, what we found was, specifically with kava, we really wanted to focus on them because of how fast they're growing and that bold strategy of them like basically copying Chipotle. And the other one is Chipotle is very competitive in these cities, and Sweetgreens is really gaining a lot of market in the thing. So those ones we felt were the biggest threat to Chipotle right now. Yeah. Anything else?
It was interesting with the competitor you mentioned, was it Kava?
Kava or Sweetgreen.
And that being allowed to do that, to move right next door, because I know when I had my business and I sold it, I had a clause in there to say that someone couldn't open a business, you know, so many miles next to it. And so you'd think there'd be, Chipotle would have some sort of pull, you know?
Yeah, it also goes down to the actual like locations that they're in, like certain strip malls, basically what they're called. They have like a limit of like how many businesses of what type can be in.
Right.
So
right.
obviously there's that component of like if there's already a Chipotle in there and the leases don't grant another fast casual, they can't. But there's a lot of places where it's kind of like the Wild West, and you could open up kind of across the street. I mean, we see it all the time. There's a McDonald's and then across the street was a
Yeah,
Burger King or a
yeah.
Wendy's. It's that same style, and this has really allowed them to grow really fast because they're basically copying somebody else's homework. Like Chipotle does the analytics, says,
Right.
hey, this is where we're gonna grow, this is a good spot, and Kava's like, you're right, we're coming with you. So,
That would be so annoying, wouldn't it?
it's super.
Being able to do that.
It's like having a parasitic twin.
Yeah, yeah.
I've actually DM'd Kava on Instagram to open a location down here, and they answered me, but they opened it in Miami, so I DM'd them again and
Part of our
said,
problem.
particularly Fort Lauderdale would be good, or like Boca. Yeah, they're a great competitor, I feel like, so that's why we were happy to dive into that.
Good job, Ezra.
Yeah.